Hey, what's up everybody? I am Jay Moss and I'm back. I've been super busy. I got hacked for a ton of money. Got it back, that's good. Been on the West Coast, planning a million things, so sorry that the videos have been slower than usual to arrive. Today I want to do a review of a plugin by a company called, hold on. Hey Lawrence, how do you pronounce that company's name again? By the way, I'm literally videotaping me asking you this right now. I say it like oak. I'm gonna go with that. I don't know. I guess it's Oak Sound. We'll go with Oak Sound. If it's not Oak Sound, I am deeply apologetic. Hopefully you'll find this review flattering and forgive me. Today I am reviewing a plugin called Soothe. You've seen me use it in basically every mix video I've ever done. I adore this plugin. When it came out, I remember thinking to myself like, how have I been recording this long using plugins the whole time and this plugin didn't exist? And how didn't I think of it? It's awesome. So what I want to do is we're going to pop over there. I'm going to show you some examples. They just released version 1.3, which is awesome because you can make it huge now, which I think you can see there. It's an amazingly useful and typically subtle plugin. Honestly, once you see what it does and how useful it can be, even if used in a subtle way, you'll probably, like myself, find it to be an invaluable tool. So let's go play with it right now. So what is Soothe? It basically does what the name of the plugin sort of sounds like. It's going to help chill out all of these errant frequencies that we used to probably rely on EQ for, to notch those out, but not statically. And that's the big thing here. We're gonna take something like cymbals or guitar or vocals, just constantly changing volumes. Frequency response of those instruments is changing dynamically all the time. What's so great is that this is a dynamic process that is going to look at the sound source and respond musically to what it hears by way of the parameters that you set. Most of my favorite things or new things that have been happening with digital plugins and technology, they have that interactive feel. Obviously we all use EQ, it totally has its place. It has a huge place, and there's times, plenty of times, where you want to just say, hey, in general, I want this to be bassier, or I want it less mid-range, or I want it to be brighter. But then there's gonna be other times where we want frequency-based dynamic attenuation that is responsive to the input signal. That might sound confusing. I think just looking at the plugin is gonna be really, really helpful. So let's have a look. As you can see here, I have a big old instance of Soothe going on. This one is on my guitar bus at the moment. If we solo the guitars, what you're gonna see is I have... So I've sort of narrowed this down to just the area where I think that the guitars at times might be a little bit conflicting with the vocals. Typically when I'm mixing, the vocal is paramount, especially in westernized pop music. And when I say pop music, I really mean rock, country, R&B, rap, everything. I think a lot of us could agree that the vocal is such an important part of the mix. So you'll find me in this case where I've got Soothe on my guitar bus. I've got its maximum sort of attenuation peak here, somewhere around 4K. That's kind of like 3 to 4K, 5K is really where a lot of the diction of the vocals lives. And I want to make sure I'm out just enough here to grab some of this 2K stuff. I often find somewhere around 2.2K, kind of like pointy, irritating peaks in the guitars. But again, it entirely depends on what type of part's being played, what type of guitar is it, what type of amp is it, what type of mic is it. So there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. However, in an instance like this, where we have a plugin that's going to be looking at the input signal first, it makes our job a whole lot easier. So let me show you what this does. Okay, so as you can see, I did have something around 2.2K. I think there was something up here around 4. It wasn't a big dip, right? And this part doesn't have a ton of high mid-range energy. If you look down here, you can see that's only 3 dB reduction. We didn't even hit that. What I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna like totally overdo this. I'm gonna show you really what it's taking out. Now, obviously, as I turn that knob way too far, it got like real phasey and weird, and I think in almost any instance that wouldn't be the right move. But what you're gonna see me do throughout this mix is that I'm going to start to stack these things intelligently so that I can duck out little irritations and bring forward the elements of the mix that I like more. So that was rhythm guitars. I mean, an amazing place for Soothe. Of course, another amazing place to use this plugin is on vocals. Let me solo the verse vocals here, and you can see I've got an instance of Soothe running. So as you can see here, I have a wider grouping of frequencies. The reason I have this wider group is like, yes, things are still going to be kind of irritating, you know, 2 to 4K for sure. That's always going to be a trouble area. And because the ear kind of hears 3K first, a lot of the times you're going to hear us attenuating most here to keep things even. The reason this is extended out this way is because there's going to be sibilant frequencies on, you know, particularly S's and hard consonant sounds that I'm going to want to also attenuate. I'll probably end up combining this with a de-esser, but it's nice to just have a little extra catch-all there to smooth things out, so as we start to brighten the mix and get closer to mastering, these things don't build up and become irritating, especially in car stereos, in places where frequency response is usually extended because people can't help just like scooping their like car stereo. They're like, bass, treble. So I gotta keep it smooth. Anyway, let's have a listen to these vocals, and you'll see probably like bigger cuts, and you'll see a little bit of that sibilant stuff go down too.
I'm paranoid and I'm losing sleep. I'm paranoid and I'm mental.
So as you can see, we're doing a lot more here.
I'm paranoid and I'm losing sleep.
Around 4K, based on the register he's singing in, the timbre of his voice, the notes that he's choosing, that's getting heavily attenuated. I'm gonna turn this off, and hopefully you're listening back on a reasonably good listening environment, because I think that if you are, you should hear right away those mid-range frequencies pop and just sort of be pokey, I guess would be a good word for it.
I'm paranoid and I'm losing sleep. I'm paranoid and I'm losing sleep.
You know, so once we've used Soothe to create this sort of balanced vocal, and we've started doing things to cut away from other instruments that might be conflicting in areas where the vocal needs to have a little bit more space, we should find a greater, more pleasing overall balance in our mix. And lastly, I want to show you guys how I use Soothe on cymbals and overheads. And this is actually the entire reason I bought Soothe to begin with, because cymbals notoriously have these strong, sharp harmonic peaks that when you bash the cymbal, like they go way up, and like there's no real elegant way to notch them, so you're always finding yourself like trying to make like a subtle EQ cut there or something that helps but doesn't really need to be applied all the time. Then you find yourself writing automation. Anyway, it can be a total mess. So in my mind, when I saw this plugin and I had to demo it, and I demoed it, I was like, oh my god, this is like the solution to this thing that I've been fighting for over a decade, and it's totally crucial. So I'm going to show you how I do it. It's a little different than just putting on inserts like I did with the other instruments, but I'll show you why I do it that way, and I think that you'll really like this trick. All right, here we are. So as you can see, we have a totally different curve going here. Everything is totally moved up to what would be typically the more irritating spots of cymbals. Another thing you're gonna see is that our sharpness is a little bit higher. And when I hit play here, you're gonna see that these notches are kind of thinner by nature. Cool, and then let's bypass it. Effectively, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to play with this depth knob until you find the point where you think it's starting to sound kind of phasey, kind of weird, and after that, then just pull it back a little bit until it starts sounding more normal again. So the goal here is to just not hear any artifacts and get your cymbal sounding smoother all at the same time. By doing this, you're going to have a much easier time EQing your mixes on the top end and being able to boost the overall image in the high frequencies and have it come across less irritating with less little weird problems. However, because cymbals are so harmonically complex and they're full of all these peaks and nuances, and they exist in these higher frequencies which have way quicker waveforms and are like just way more susceptible to artifacts, one thing I always like to do when I'm doing anything that's mostly existing in this higher frequency data realm is I like to turn my oversampling all the way up to 4x, and then I set Soothe to ultra. This will probably totally decimate your CPU, but there's a way around that, and I'm going to show you that now. So I want you to take a look here. This is my CPU meter, and this is just one instance of Soothe. And this will kind of show you how CPU intensive this can get when you push it into sort of like overdrive, but super high end mode. Let's turn our oversampling to 4x, and let's turn our resolution to ultra. Now look up here again, check that out. Obviously my CPU spiked, right? And this is just one instance. Clearly, if I wanted to do this to all the instances I have of the plugin, that's just not gonna work. It's just gonna reduce my CPU overhead too much. It's just not an efficient workflow. So the trick to this is, after you figure out whatever settings you like for that particular cymbal group, you can just go here, save yourself a preset. After you save a preset, by hitting F7 in Cubase, it loads the direct offline processing. Effectively what this does is I can come over here, I can load up any plugin I want. In this case, we've loaded Soothe. I can jack it up to 4x, I can jack it up to Ultra. I'll retain this curve that I like so much. And by doing so, Cubase is going to print this information directly into the WAV files. What's great, this is a Cubase feature, is that if I don't want this or I want to change this, I can either bypass here, I can still adjust settings, and then it may take a minute or two to process again because this is so CPU intensive, but boom, it'll just go back to the dry signal and then reprint this all over again. So effectively you are committing into the WAV file, but now you have the freedom to continually make adjustments. You can do the same thing, I think, in Audio Suite with Pro Tools. I don't know if it's quite as elegant as this solution, but if you do have the opportunity inside your DAW to get this done, I definitely recommend it because you can make your cymbals sound a lot sweeter and it takes no CPU overhead, whatever. Plus you still retain the ability to make adjustments if you want to down the road. So that's a big thumbs up for me. I do it on all my cymbals. I recommend you give it a shot because it's awesome. Oh, I almost forgot. Distorted bass peak pick attack. Crucial. One last one. Check this out. So this one might be a little bit harder to hear, but it's actually really important because bass typically lives in the center. So do our vocals typically. So for that reason, any high mid-range stuff that's a little overwhelming and that also lives in the center with the vocals could be a problem. So it's a really good idea to throw this on and just duck those down a little bit if you start to hear those conflictions. And I'll show you what that sounds like now. Again, these are all just like little things that stack up and create hopefully an awesome mix, which I'm gonna play now, and then I'm gonna get back to work because I have so much to do. Thanks for being really patient, like really patient with me making new videos. And let's listen to this mix, and I'll see everybody, I don't know. I won't see you, you'll see me. That's the thing about YouTube, is you see me, I don't see you. But I think I see you, but I just see this. Bye.
I'm telling stories.